my friends present, past and beyond, especially those who weren't with us too long. Life is the most precious thing you can lose. While you were here, the fun was never ending. Life a minute was only beginning. Captain Colvin Nichols, this one's for you!
Hello and welcome to the Hit Show. I am your host, Eric Ruth, and we are joined today by JB. This is going to be a very special interview for me. JB is, we'll let him get into it actually, but JB has agreed to be put under oath for this. I'm going to depose him to talk about his life and his trauma, to figure out what he has done to overcome it and what he's doing today. JB, how you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Dude, thanks for being here. Do you agree, affirm, and swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you someone's God?
I don't know. You're a lawyer, man, so I don't know if I trust you.
You should never trust me. All right. Who did you come out of and where?
Yeah, obviously me and you have a very similar history. I grew up in Southern California, lived in the system almost all of my life. I got taken away when I was 4. My mother was a heroin addict and a bank robber, so I got stuck in Orangewood and the group homes and all similar things as you, and luckily made it out.
Tell the people about Orangewood. What is Orangewood?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's different now. I talked a lot of shit about it back in the day. And can we cuss on this?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah,
come on, we're sailors.
right. And I'll tell you, like, back in the day, it was really trash, but now I think they've revitalized it. I'm actually considering going out and like taking a look and seeing what they're doing. I may be volunteering there. We'll see.
What years were you there?
I was there a lot. So I was there 3 different times between 1984 and 1988. So from the age of 4 to 8, and I can't do math, but that's like pretty basic there for me. But my last time was when I was 8 years old. And then I was very blessed to get put into a Christian group home system called South Coast Children's Society. And for me, I mean, it was just God blessed, phenomenal experience, because a lot of the other group homes that I was in, they were not so good. But Orangewood, for people that listen, it's almost like an institutionalized orphanage where kids, both good and bad, that are emotionally neglected, abused, or violent, go, and then they separate it by age and sex. So you got like toddler, preteen, teen, and then broken apart by male and female.
All right. And then after Orangewood, you went into group homes. I myself ended up in foster care. You went into group homes. Tell the folks about what group home life is like.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I wrote the book, because when you look at the doctrine and the data and the history of kids in the system, there's a lot out there on foster care. There's a lot out there on orphanages. There's a lot out there on the adoption process, but there's very little out there on what a group home is and what group home kids go through. It's almost like a ghost network, and you have no idea what the outcome is for these kids. So for me, group homes are another static orphanage. Most times it's a 6-bed home. And half the time, those kids in there are bad. They're not the ones that were put in there because their parents neglected them. It's because they were violent or abusive to their family.
Yeah. What was your trauma?
I mean, I've been lucky with that too. And working in the community that we've worked in, I've supported special operations most of my career. And that trauma, I think, is way worse than what I went through. It's hard for me to answer that, because whenever I got into a spot that was really difficult, God had put someone in the way to stop me from going down a dark path. So I'd say my trauma right now is 100% emotional based, and it led me to be a better person though. So that trauma actually taught me so much EQ that when I moved into business development, my ability to read rooms I don't think anybody could touch me.
Yeah. How did your trauma manifest?
I was too naive and gullible and kind, so I trusted people I shouldn't have for most of my young life. And it got worse with that. And there was a lot of loneliness for that one when I was growing up. In SoCal, especially in Orange County, people have a misunderstanding of like Southern California. They think it's like beaches and awesome. No, man, there's like a dark underworld. Costa Mesa is one of those where I grew up, and It's hard to be a really nice, kind young person without getting bullied and beat up, and that's really how it manifested for me.
Okay. How did you become aware of your trauma?
I mean, I was pretty self-aware early on. I think where it really started for me, I was like 9 years old. I had already gone down the path of becoming a Christian and finding God that way. But I had a staff member. Her name was Rita. She's in the book. She taught me about art, and I didn't realize how creative I was at that time, and I think that's kind of what changed me and moved me forward.
Okay. So you age out of the system?
No. So what's crazy is, and I don't really talk too much about this in the book. I end it when I move into foster care, because I didn't, like, you understand this. I didn't want the foster care life to be associated to the group, because it's so different. Like, most of the foster care folks and kids and parents, they are almost all amazing. There's a few bad ones out there, but for the most part, pretty damn amazing. But at 15, 14 and a half, 15, I had to move. So South Coast Road Society had 7 or 8 different group homes. Most of them were focused on developmentally disabled kids at higher and lower levels. Like, you got the autistic and developmentally disabled ones, and then you have ones that can't do anything on their own and need 100% people to help them get through life. But I was in, like, I guess you'd say, normal group home, where most of the kids were just emotionally neglected or abused that way. And the group home that I was in, we named them off of streets in SoCal, right? So mine was Traverse House. And I loved it. I had amazing staff members there. House parents were really cool. But to make room for younger kids, I had to leave and go to an emancipation home, which we called the Dahlia House, which was a couple streets down in Costa Mesa. Terrible experience. And I was like, people were really hard to deal with there. The staff members were very uncaring. And a lot of those staff members were focused on their clinical psychology master's programs at not Fountain Valley, at Fullerton, Cal State Fullerton. And so at that time, I lost my CASA. I don't know if you know what a CASA is, but right at a court-appointed special advocate. I had him since I was 6. He died, and then I got put into this fucking emancipation home, which decimated me. And so I really went on just a downward spiral. And I in the gym, crazy enough, I met a judge, and we just started talking about the Lakers and then baseball, and got along for a while. And I started opening up to him a bit, and he pulled me out. He actually went in, became a foster parent, and pulled me out. Didn't really tell me much about it. But yeah, man, at almost 17, he grabbed me out. It was amazing.
That's crazy. So
Yeah.
what does your life look like from there?
Well, I got a lot of freedom with that. So group homes, you don't have much freedom. They're watching you in the backyard. They're watching you on your way to the bus stop. There's really not much room to do anything with friends. You're not allowed to go to parties. You can't play sports. You can't stay after school. So all of a sudden, I had an immense amount of freedom. And I had I was working for a long time. I had saved my money. So I bought an old car, and I had movement. And so I kind of went crazy for a while, for a few years, smoked too much pot and did some really stupid things like that. Until one day you've heard of Del Taco, Del Taco,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So it was like 3 a.m, and I drove right into the mic box. And all my friends were in the car, and I just remember looking around, and they were just laughing at me. And I'm like, man, forget you guys. 2 weeks later, I was in boot camp.
It's crazy. And which branch did you choose to go into?
Yeah, I probably should have chose the Army, to be honest with you. But at that night, and I don't know if it was James Earl Jones's voice or not, but it was "Let the Journey Begin." That's what it was back then. And I was just awake at night, and I was like, man, I'm gonna go to the recruiter's office tomorrow morning. And I just went right in there, and I was in the Navy, and I was so dumb too. They had Top Gun playing. No enlisted person is gonna go fly a jet,
So what year was this?
I joined in '99, and I stayed until 03.
Gotcha. So, and what was your experience like in the military?
Man, people struggled in boot camp. And for me, it was a joke because I was so structured. In group homes, it's you get up at this time, you have to do all these things. It's all process oriented, and you get in trouble if you don't do it. There's like a reward system and a punishment system. So all I had to do was wake up, do some PT, get some free food, learn some cool things. And yeah, it was a breeze. The boot camp was a breeze for me, but choosing to do cryptology, that was dumb. I should have chose to do photography. I was by far the dumbest in that class, and I knew it. Like, these guys were brilliant geniuses. And then I get stuck at NSA, right? I joined the Navy to stay in Southern California, and they sent me to Fort Meade, Maryland. I was like, man.
So what do you get out in 03, and where do you go?
So I got recruited out, and I just stayed in the DMV area, in the Northern Virginia, DC area. And fast forward a few years, I deployed to Iraq in 2007 as a contractor. And that was like my first taste in supporting SOF. And it was just after that, I came back, helped stand up the special operations branch at JIDO, the Joint ID Defeat Organization, lots of deployments to Afghanistan, and that was it.
All right. So since you left the system when you were 17, 18, did you experience any trauma?
I mean, yeah, I experienced trauma with like my relationships. I think is what really hit me hard, as I was, again, too trusting and naive. And, my first marriage, like, I got 3 beautiful children out of that first marriage, but I made spousal mistakes on my own. I was not a great husband. And we just were not great for each other. And the trauma really was bad with that.
So let me ask you this. How did your trauma manifest inside your relationships?
Yeah, I was too needy, and I demanded attention when I shouldn't have, and not necessarily jealous, but I would be bummed and sad if my spouse would choose somebody over me, even the kids, and it was hard. It was hard for me to adjust. I did. I mean, we all adapt, right? That's what's great about people that grow up like us. That's why I want to push that message out there, and I know you do too. Like, living like that, like, there's such a strength to what you've endured.
Right. You can bend so far and before you break, but I think that people like you and I that are in that, you bend a lot and you become pretty flexible later on.
Yeah.
But
and
what work did you do as an adult to overcome your deficiencies in your relationship and how your trauma was manifesting itself?
yeah, it's imposter syndrome, actually, for me, big time. So I sat in this amazing special operations branch for years with these just amazing badasses, and I always felt like I was never good enough and I could never get to that next level. And then I immediately realized that that's how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to actually feel that, because you need to be the best you possibly can be for your guy and girl next to you. And so kind of like at that point, I it just evaporated for me. And I started living like that and trying to live to the standards of those around me, what they expected of me. And I'm some of the best friends in the world I have from that.
I got it. So you have written a book. Obviously, we've talked about it here. Kind of talk about what, obviously, we've gone on your story, but why'd you write it?
I didn't want to write it for anybody but myself at first. I love to write. It's always been a cathartic thing for me. I've been writing for a long time. I have terrible purple prose, by the way. So if you read it, you'll see I'm overly descriptive, kind of like opposite of Hemingway and more towards like Jack London, how Jack London would write pages on like the side of a mountain and talk about a bush. That's kind of how I write. But I did it to be cathartic at first. And then my wife, Shauna, she was like, you really got to get this out there so your kids can know what you went through. And then also, what if there's someone out there that reads that, one person, and it helps them? So we went on a path to find the right publisher to do that, and a really good artist that helped my vision of the jacaranda tree in the front of it get out there. It was a really good journey. And now I'm on my second book, and it's a lot easier to write.
Sure. What do you do today if you feel triggered or you feel one of those, sensations that is driven by your trauma?
I appreciate that question, man. I'm just recently learning about meditation, and I know that's like ancient, right? But for me, I just started meditating most every day. And it's funny, my wife now asks me when I'm like triggered a little bit, or like I have no patience anyways, or if I'm angry, she'll like, have you meditated? I'm like, yeah. Like, so that really does help me.
Okay. So what does your meditation process look like? What do you do?
Funny enough, I just used the Calm app. Have you heard of it?
I have not. Explain it.
So the Calm app, it's like the most famous out there. If you just type in Calm on in Apple or whatever you use, it's a meditation platform with different guided tours, personal ways to meditate, learning to meditate, the journey for that. And a Marine Raider buddy of mine introduced me to it one day in DC when we were just having a hard time. And it really has been life-changing for me.
Okay. You ever do any therapy?
I used to. We did. So that's the hardest question, right? That's for me. It's the hardest question because I spend as a kid that had emotional damage, being around other kids that were far worse, and having to deal with psychologists, social workers, and psychiatrists, and having weekly sessions for the group sessions, weekly personal sessions, like IQ tests with psychiatrists, like throughout my entire life. I started doing it like a game because I could tell a lot of them actually cared. So I would game the system and try to like make a friendship with the psychologist, and it worked a lot. So I actually, whenever I'm in therapy, if I ever do it, I like it. It's a good journey for me because on the other end, how amazing is that person having to ingest your emotion? So I love folks that do psychology and therapy. I don't really need it. My wife is my therapist. I think I tell her everything, and she's a phenomenal human. The exact opposite of me.
Yeah.
Truly, like beautiful, calm, collected, like aware of, like socially aware of everything, and has like just an amazing, like calm way of explaining shit. And I'm like, execute, go, move. And we're a good team. So like when I'm tripping out a little bit, she's my therapist. And I think it's vice versa too.
When you first got in a relationship with your wife, where was your level of vulnerability? How easy was it for you to be vulnerable with her?
It was pretty easy, real quick. So we knew of each other where we were because she was the best at what she did, and I was the best at what I did. So we were always in similar paths. She supported soft too. And then we were literally passing ships in Kandahar, southern Afghanistan. She was on the intel side, and I was doing some of the signals intelligence stuff. And fast forward years later, we're both in like tough relationships, getting separated from our spouses and stuff, and that story. And what changed is we started talking about books, and like I love to read, and I have just this love for fantasy and science fiction novels, and it's weird, right? But especially in that world, like everybody loves to read their like crime thrillers and adventure thrillers and mysteries and all the political stuff that's associated to what we do. But she did the same. She knew every book that I was talking about. And so we like nerded out about that, and it just changed. So like I became super vulnerable and open, and I think she did too. And it was both what we needed. And it's been, I mean, seriously, 7 years later, it's still that way.
Was that your first relationship where you were able to be that level of vulnerable with her?
Oh yeah. And it's not even scary at all. Like I thought it would be like pretty scary, but yeah, I'm pretty childish around her, man.
What is your relationship with accepting love?
I'm pretty good at that. I've been very lucky with that. Yeah, like I crave it. Like my wife says, like you have these love languages. I have all of them. She says, like, girl, you need all of them. Like words of affirmation, physical touch, like quality time, like all of that. So I accept love pretty easily.
Well, that's good. That's good. So where do you think you would be without the support of your wife on this journey?
Oh man. Yeah, I don't even know if I'd be here, to be honest with you.
Really?
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
Just because I don't know like what I would do. Not like personal hurt. I just like I don't know where like I'd put myself into dangerous positions and just not care. Probably.
Yeah. Okay. What would you say to somebody that has gone through what you've gone through and is really struggling with their triggers and trauma and all of the shit?
I would say just get to tomorrow and see how it feels. Don't like let that stop you, because what you've gotten through this far is unbelievable. Think about like the cherished life that most kids have, like with parents and it's, yeah, they have their own struggles, but you got a roof over your head, you got friends, you got family, you got love, you have all of these things. And these kids don't have that, and you're still fighting on every day. Think about what that strength can do when you're an adult. It's powerful, man.
It really is. What would you say has been the top or the key to you being a functional adult today, given what you've gone through?
I'm not functional, man.
You're holding out on a job, you got a relationship, you got kids, you're paying your taxes. I'd call that pretty functional.
Yeah. I've just been, look, man, I believe in grit and luck. And so I have a lot of grit. I don't quit. I never give up. I push pretty hard. But I also believe that I've been very blessed and lucky. And God has really, really looked out. He still does every day, looks out for me. Always putting people in the right path for me to like just make good decisions and just get into really cool jobs. And he's blessed me with some cool traits, you know.
What is the relationship with your mother, and how have you addressed her errors and her ways?
Yeah, so I don't know, man, to be honest. So like my dad died when I was 4 from lymphoma. He was also an addict. But then she went like completely nuts and super addicted to heroin. And the last time I touched my mother was the last time I got taken from her. I saw her in jail. We had to, I had a really cool psychologist at that time named Dave. I'm not sure if I should say his last name. But he pretended to be the parole officer so that she would see me. And I remember just walking in there. She looked like she had just gotten out of the shower, and she saw me start crying and dipped out. And that was it. And then fast forward years and years later, my foster dad, who was still a judge at the time, she was on parole still. And I was in my second year of the Navy. I was at NSA doing my thing. I was advancing. I was already in E4. He found her, the parole officer, and her. We started talking a little bit. And I forgive. I tell my kids that you got to forgive. There's so much strength in saying sorry and being forgiven and to forgive. So like I immediately like forgave, because like drugs are horrid, right? And it destroyed her. Alcohol destroyed her. There came a point though where the conversation kind of ended because she started asking for things that she shouldn't have. And I was young and kind of stupid, and I got a little angry about that. So I just stopped communication. And it was a mistake because nobody knows where she is now, if she's alive or dead. I look all the time to see if there's death records, and nothing. So I have no idea. But thankfully, the forgiving part is there.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, it's clear, JB, that you've done the work too. I know you say you don't call yourself a functional adult, and there's certainly some argument there. I don't, but no, I love your story. I love that you've been able to share it in the way that you do, and I'm glad to call you a friend. So Absolutely. Tell the people what you're doing now. What are you up to?
So you know what? Like all those deployments for both me and my wife, we just got like right when we met, we were still deploying, right? And so we made the decision because we blended our family, right? Her 2 kids, my 3 kids. We're like, what are we good at? She's amazing with people. Like she takes care of people, amazing with programs. So she went down the program management path for the government. And then I went going down business for me. I was really good with business development, and that Rolodex and network I had from supporting special operations allowed me to work in business development within the defense world here. And it's just been super amazing. It's nothing like sexy at all. It's like we go and look for really cool contracts and we try to win them as a company to provide the warfighter with like the best possible technology. It's nothing like sexy, but I get to work from home. We're safe, good income, and I'm good at it.
Awesome. Where can people buy your book?
It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. We're trying to get it onto bookshelves, but I'm terrible at marketing. I'm like the worst at branding for myself. So I'm super grateful for this opportunity to talk to you. And awesome, too, to like ask me all these questions. Like I have questions for you, but we might have to do that over beers another time.
Yeah, we certainly do over beers. And, you and I both have a pact that we got to push each other to sell our book. So I'll push you, keep pushing me. Well, JB, I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your story and letting people know, what, especially I want to highlight the fact that, I was in foster care. We went through kind of a very similar path until Orangewood. and then it bifurcated from there. And my life was beautiful. I was down in the Real Housewives of Orange County neighborhood and playing ice hockey in Southern California. And
Yeah, it's
then
amazing.
you're right. And I knew the group home kids, and it was a completely different atmosphere. And you are, to this day, the only human being that I know from my life back then that came out of that in a group home that's sitting
Yeah.
here, that isn't in jail, that isn't dead, because again, it's an institution, and it's not a great one, at least when it was, 20, 25, 30 years ago. So,
Yeah. No, that's a good point, man. And like, I wish we had data on this. I wish those statistics were out there so that we could hold the state, the federal government accountable. I wish there was a task force that me and you, we could run that shit and run it down state by, right? Like we run it down state by state to see where these kids end up and make sure that they actually have an avenue to succeed.
Yeah. No, I know here in Michigan, I've done some work with, you mentioned CASA, and I've worked with probate courts and some prosecutor agencies out here. And I can say that the system is a hell of a lot better than it was 30 years ago, but there's always room for improvement, right?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people that see you now, right? Back in the day, there weren't cameras and video being videoed everywhere, right?
Oh my God. Right. Yeah. That's a huge thing. So
yeah. Like all the shit that we got away with. That's why I try to give my kids like a little leeway. Cause I have cameras in my house. I ring the Ring doorbells and all that. Like I see everything. Poor kids. No parties here, kiddos. Sorry.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it. JB, thank you so much for joining me, man. If anybody out there's got a story you want to talk about trauma, get a hold of me at thehonestyexperiment.com or thegoodly25@gmail.com. Thank you so much, JB.
Thanks, brother.